Me and Tom Brady. Obviously, this is going to be a football story. My introduction to football was in 1979. Now, my mom was pregnant with my little brother, and I was 7 years old. And I was being told, well, you're going to have a little brother, but he's going to be too much younger than you to really have fun with him anyhow, because he's going to be a little baby at first. And I'm thinking down the road, like, well, what point will he be old enough that he will be fun? Well, my stepsister was already out of high school and she was getting married. And she was getting married to a man named Mike Helmick. And he decided he was going to teach me how to catch a football. Now, I'd already been, played toss back and forth like this, but he was teaching me to catch the ball like this. Man, the first time I catch a pass over my shoulder, that was awesome. And I'm thinking, okay, now I know a point. I know by the time a kid's 7, I'm going to have something fun I can do with him. It turned out my mom had a miscarriage, so I didn't end up having that little brother. Besides playing a game of catch, I hadn't been exposed to football. The next year in 1980, my little sister, she joins a cheerleading squad in Parsons, West Virginia, and the name of the team was the Browns. First, in the summertime, leading up to the football season, her practices already started, and I was too young to stay at home without a babysitter, and my mom had to take my sister to practice, and the moms would have their, time, and the girls are cheerleading, and I didn't have crap to do, so the cheerleading thing, this whole thing wasn't looking very good, and for me, no fun for me. But then the first game comes, and I'll see the game actually being played, and I'm like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Kids running with the ball and getting tackled and tackling each other. It was everything. So I fell in love with football, and that was in 1980. The Little League team was the Browns. This was in the days when you had 13 channels on old turn knob. We had 3 NBCs, 3 CBSs, and 2 ABCs. So you didn't really have 13 different channels, but we did have Superstation out of Chicago, WGN, and we had something like Christian Channel 6, we had PBS, and then we had them other channels. That's what we had. One of them was Steubenville, Ohio, and it showed some Browns games, so I rooted for the Browns. Well, little did I know, because I hadn't really done a survey or nothing, I'm still a little kid, find out Pittsburgh was much closer than Cleveland was. And the only reason the Little League team wasn't called the Little League teams playing other Little League teams, every team would probably wanted to be the Steelers, but that name was already taken. So the Little League team was the Browns. But nonetheless, I'd already committed to liking them on the TV screen at that early age, and by the time I'm finding out that the other kids, once I start talking football, they're like, Browns, that was the worst team I could have picked because they're in the same division as the Steelers. So I was stuck with it, though, because I wasn't going to break loyalty once I'd already committed to the loyalty of them. So, Browns fan I was. And they did have they weren't winning a whole lot of games there at first, but they had a heck of a good quarterback, Brian Sipe, and they had a heck of a good tight end, Ozzie Newsome. And so, I got to see some great plays, and they didn't have to win Super Bowls or nothing like that for me to enjoy rooting for them and everything. Well, that led up and kept going till let's see, Brian Sipe ends up getting pulled over to the USFL by Donald Trump. Had the New Jersey Generals, and he took away my quarterback, Brian Sipe. So that's what happened to Brian Sipe. But a wonderful thing happened in 1985. The Browns drafted Bernie Kosar, and on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which I so happened to have a subscription to that, thanks to my mom. She got me a subscription to Sports Illustrated, and on the cover of a 1985 issue leading into the football season was a Cleveland Brown. This was a big deal, and I still remember what it said on the cover of the Sports Illustrated. It said, Cleveland pins its hopes on Bernie. And I'm like, okay, well, I was excited about this. And then in the story inside of it was Dan Marino had a party before the football season, and amongst the guests of these NFL quarterbacks was Bernie Kosar. And during the party, they had a tire up on a rope, and they all have to throw the football. Well, Bernie beat all these NFL quarterbacks, and that was in Sports Illustrated, so it was really something to have to cheer for leading into the football season. And he got them into the playoffs. So they won the division in 1985. They won the division with an 8-8 record, but they had a weak division that year, so that was good enough to get them into the playoffs, and that was fantastic. By this point, I was into backyard football. me and my buddy Mark Chenoweth, we ate and breathed football by this point. Now, got into Little League football, but Little League football was, the coaches ran things, and I wasn't very fast, and I wasn't especially, I didn't give them any indication that I would be necessarily good football player. There's a lot of kids that were better athletes than me for sure. But the thing about the quarterback position was strategy was everything. But in Little League, you got coaches, grown men, and they were in football long before me. So I may have even carried an unnecessary chip on my shoulder that I should have been quarterback of the team. And maybe I shouldn't have been, but in my mind I should have been, because when we played backyard football, I was quarterback and my team won, even if I was playing with these other kids that were the athletes on the Little League team. Backyard football, I was doing good. So me and my buddy Mark Chenoweth, he liked the Seattle Seahawks. So we didn't cheer for the same team, but leading up to that Super Bowl in 1986, the big news story was Chicago Bears almost had a perfect season. It was kind of worked out beautiful. What kept them from that perfect season was being defeated by the Miami Dolphins, the only team that ever did have a perfect season back in '72, the year I was born. But nonetheless, the Bears had a rap song about how good their team was. They had some star athletes that were doing cool things. They had a lineman that they'd put in the backfield and score touchdowns, William the Refrigerator Perry. And then so me and my buddy Mark Chenoweth and our other buddy Brian Booth, we decided leading up to the Super Bowl that we were going to have a Super Bowl party. And we decided we were going to go around, knock on people's doors, because we got a good snowstorm there in January. And we started knocking on doors saying, you want your driveway shoveled? And pretty soon we had enough money to have us a heck of a Super Bowl party. We had pizza, we had chips and dip, we had pop, we had more food than we could eat. And we were all rooting for the Chicago Bears. But we did invite one other kid, and he comes over and he was rooting for the New England Patriots. Plus he hadn't helped us make the money for the snacks. He was the odd man out. He ended up leaving before halftime. But that didn't stop us from enjoying the heck out of that Super Bowl party. Chicago Bears dominated 46-10, crushed the New England Patriots, crushed them. It was January 26, 1986. 1986 year started off fantastic for sports. Football wasn't the only sport I liked. I liked baseball, and like I say, we had the WGN out of Chicago, Superstation. I watched a lot of Chicago Cubs games, and Harry Carey announcing, and really enjoyed them. Well, my favorite player had been Bill Buckner. But Bill Buckner, he got traded to the Boston Red Sox. So he's out there playing for Boston. So come October in 1986, Bill Buckner, my favorite player, is in the World Series. This is fantastic. And then they were one out from winning the World Series in Game 6, and the freaking ball went through his legs. Now, Bill Buckner was a heck of a baseball player. It just was what it was. And they didn't win that game, and they didn't win Game 7 either, so it's like, damn. So my very, very favorite baseball player had come that close to being a world champion with me as a fan, and I'm watching this game on my little black and white TV in my bedroom. And it's like, oh, no, this was bad omen. Well, the Browns season's up and rolling already by this point, and the Browns had the best season. They went 12-4, so they won the division again. But this time they didn't just win it; they had a hell of a football team, and then they make it to the AFC Championship, and they're facing the Denver Broncos. Now, Bernie was great. Denver had a hell of a great quarterback too, John Elway. And I'll be danged if that son of a you-know-what didn't have what's still known as the drive. 98 yards at the end in the fourth quarter, tie the game, put in overtime, the freaking Denver Broncos end up winning. It's like, oh, but still, it was a big improvement over the year before, so there's always come back next year. Next year, 1987, the Browns go 10-5, and they get up there again, and this time we're got the drive coming in, make a great comeback in the second half after trailing big time at halftime, and Reddy could have won the game, and Ernest Biner fumbles the ball, just like Bill Buckner's error. It's like, oh, no, and the Browns don't win it that year either. And then, so it went on. Next year, 1988, they went 10-6, but got knocked out in the wild card game. Marty Schottenheimer, the coach, he goes down to Kansas City. Bud Carson comes in. 1990, 3-13. Went all the way up there to the top, and now he's coming back down to the bottom. Since never mounted nothing to Little League, I never went into high school football. But I stuck with that backyard football stuff and had dreams of me being a quarterback. Was good at the quarterback position. Knew I was because I was playing with the same kids that played in high school and stuff. But never got to prove it to nobody. Well, one time they come into town, the carnival does, and they got a tire on a rope. Wouldn't you know it, while I'm up at that tire to go through my 3 footballs, Jed Drenning, who won for best football player in the state. Now he announces games, one of the commentators for WVU on the radio. But this is way back. Well, he already knew me because he liked my sister at one. And he was always nice. He's a nice guy, you know. And so he comes, I throw 3 balls through the tire. He comes behind me, 3 balls through the tire. And the guy running the game's like, that never happens. He's like, this is on me. He's like, I got to know. He's like, no charge. Let's have a throw off and see who can get the most through. Well, I beat Jed Drenning at throwing through the tire thing. Now, it ain't football out on the field and running the ball and all these. You know, Jed was a hell of an athlete. It didn't mean as much to him as it did to me. I'm not saying he missed him on purpose because I know he didn't. I appreciate Jed Drenning just for like adding that to my whatever football thing, which ain't much, but it was what it was. And then Bill Belichick. You ever hear of him? Well, Bill Belichick came over to coach for the Browns, and his first season with the Browns went 6-10. Big improvement of 3-13. 1992, 7-9. 1993, 7-9. Now, by this time, I'm into the Grateful Dead also. So, all my stuff, basically all my stuff was either Browns stuff, and then now I'm accumulating other T-shirts. I got the Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead, my loyalty to the Grateful Dead's on the come up. I'm still staying. I can't lose my loyalty to the Browns, and I wasn't going to. But in 1994, I had a girlfriend, and she didn't like football. And so even though Bill Belichick they made the Browns pretty good that year, it went 11-5, I wasn't following that season that closely because I'm going to her son's Little League basketball games and stuff during the football season. And so it's hard for me to follow the games, and here they made it up there, and you know who beat them again in the playoffs was that daggone Denver Broncos and that son of a brick. You heard me. I said it. I couldn't restrain it. That son of a brick, John Elway. And damn, so, and come 95, my relationship with my girlfriend breaks up. Jerry Garcia dies, and the Cleveland Browns pack up and take off to Baltimore. For me, the Browns leaving was actually a mercy killing because but it wasn't. I didn't take it that way at the time, but it freed me up. Now because when you're really hardcore into football, you know you got a commitment to Sunday afternoons and Monday nights sometimes, and when your team loses, if it's a close game, you can't. For me, at least, it was hard for me to erase that thought. It would ruin a lot of Mondays and Tuesdays, depending on what happened with my team. Put it that way. And I'd lay in bed thinking, oh, just this player, that play. If only that went different. But if your team won, a lot of bad shit could happen, and you were still in a good mood because your team won. So, and I loved seeing the game played too. But nonetheless, I lost my girlfriend, I lost my football team, and I lost my Grateful Dead all in the same year, so I start soul searching. And so my soul searching leads me all across the country a couple times, you know, and I don't pay any attention to football at all. And then on January 25th, 1998, it so happened I was in San Diego, California, and I go to get on the bus, and I see these people with cheese slices on their head. I'm like, what's with all the people with the cheese on their head? And they're like, oh, but the Super Bowl's here in San Diego. You didn't know that? I'm like, oh, no, I totally lost track of. Green Bay was playing the Denver Broncos right there in San Diego. So as I'm at the bus station getting on the bus to go east, there's this influx of people coming into San Diego for the game, and a lot of them are coming right into that same Greyhound station. So I'm seeing this flood of excited, riled up people, both Denver Broncos fans and the Cheeseheads, and so this is sweeping into San Diego. Well, it so happened that as I go out of San Diego, get to Las Vegas, where there was a long layover right during Super Bowl time, if you can believe that. And so I asked somebody, it's like, hey, is there a good place to go watch a football game here in Las Vegas for free? And they tell me about this street that has like a lit up dome over top of it, but it's a street. And on that street, sure enough, there was this big Jumbotron. And crowds of people watching the football game on the Jumbotron. I mean, what a great place to watch the Super Bowl with lots and lots of fans. And there in Las Vegas, and people were really into the game because they got money riding on it and stuff. Wouldn't you know it, if I didn't have to see that son of a John Elway win that Super Bowl? It's like I'm being shown something. It's like, and then, wouldn't you know it, the next day, I'm in Denver, Colorado. And there's a big parade for the Denver Broncos in Denver. So, city where it was played, Las Vegas during the Super Bowl, and the victory parade in Denver. But it's that son of a gun that robbed me of all that. But he didn't plan this to happen to me. And, you know, it had to be God. It's like, what is God trying to tell me? It's like, first of all, I'm out of football, which seemed like a blessing. It's like, why is God pulling me back in this to rub it in my face about John Elway? It didn't make sense, but nonetheless, I was like, God's just got a sense of humor. I already knew God had a sense of humor because nothing about this was hurting me. But it's like, why do you think I want to see that? You know. So, but anyhow, that's what God had to show me. Then I end up, that soul searching led me to the mother of my children, and me and her made 3 beautiful children together, and we lived in Preston County, West Virginia, out on a farm. We had one channel we got with an antenna, and that was PBS. So we didn't have to worry about what our kids were watching on television. And even when we did get internet, it was dial-up internet, and heck, it took like an hour to listen to download a 5-minute song. So we'd watch movies, and the kids could watch PBS, and that was good. That was perfect. Didn't follow no football. Didn't have a favorite team no more, because even though the Browns came back to Cleveland, I was freed up for that. And all those years I was free from it. In 2007, that marriage came to an end. I ended up at my buddy's house. And I got a lot of pain going on in my heart and stuff like that. And I had my kids there a good bit of the time too, and which was a good thing. And my youngest son, he was only 2 years old, and I go pick him up one time, and he's a stout little kid, and he had big ribs and big shoulders and stuff. And I go pick him up, and I'm like, "Dang boy, you feel like you could be on the New York Giants." And I think to myself, why did you say New York Giants? I was like, that was weird. Where did that come from? I'm thinking, wouldn't it be something if the New York Giants make it to the Super Bowl? Maybe that's what I was being told. Well, and sure enough, it comes down to Super Bowl time, and I'm watching the football game with my buddy, and I had all this heartbreak and stuff, and this is a good release from the heartbreak. But here, on the other side from the Giants, is this kid I never heard of, really. Tom Brady. I might have heard somebody chatting about him, but here I come to find out this kid's already got 3 Super Bowls. And this is really my first time back into watching professional football where the stars are younger than me. And so that might have had an effect on me too. And plus I'd been through all this pain. I found out he was about to have a perfect season and have his 4th Super Bowl if they won this game, plus a 30-game win streak. It's like, who this guy I never heard of, younger than me, is about to be all that? And it's like, bullshit. I already wanted the Giants to win because I have the premonition, so I really, really was rooting for the Giants hardcore, even though they were big underdogs. And Tom Brady got beat that game, and he didn't have his perfect season. He didn't tie Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana with 4 Super Bowls. And so there's like, oh, you kid, you weren't that great. You weren't the greatest, and you got crushed, and you deserved it. So there. And it was, I didn't have compassion because it's like you didn't lose a family like I did. So you lost a football game. I don't care. There's nothing, no part of my soul cared about the pain he may or may not have been feeling. None. That was my little tiny victory of comfort in that time. I'm still not back. It didn't pull me back into football as a Giants fan. It was just a one-day thing. The 2008 season, 2009 Super Bowl. I was up in Alaska. My oldest son, he was in Pennsylvania with his mom at some friend's house. Well, they were Pittsburgh Steelers fans. He gets his first exposure to professional football. He got to see the Steelers win the Super Bowl and he loved it. And I come back, he told me how he loved football and loved seeing the Steelers win. I'm like, Steelers? Damn, son. It's like, oh, well, I was glad he had that experience, but I was jealous as shit too. And because I told him, I'm like, you got to understand, I'm happy for you, but it ain't really a happy thing for me. And then there was a season after that where the Steelers made it to another Super Bowl. I believe this is against the Green Bay Packers. And I'm watching them play, and my son was rooting for them to win. My heart couldn't not want them to lose. And that's terrible to be rooting against my own son's happiness like that. And he had to see his team lose. And, I did feel compassion for him, but it was like I also wanted the spell to be broken of the Steelers too, and God decides these things, not me, And so I was like, well, he was meant to be shown that loss. And I told him about all the hard things I had with professional sports, my Bill Buckner story, my Browns fumble, and that goddamn John Elway. So, I had plenty of stories to relate to his pain. Then end up getting a job at a sawmill. This is in 2012, and then 2013. Well, from 2012 to 2019, I was working at this sawmill. And something about manual labor, when you're doing physical work, you can relate to athletes because they're doing physical work. I was 40 years old at this point. A lot of guys, is my little small town, West Virginia, you went there out of high school and you might work there for 45 years and build a happy life around. Well, me coming in there at 40 years old, these guys didn't want to see me come in there and be great. Now, who blames them? They committed their life to being good at this. And I wasn't great at first. I had to learn how to do it at first. But I had a lot of resentments we'll show you. You think you're going to run around following the Grateful Dead around and then come in here and work hard like we are. We're going to make this hard on you. And they did, but by making it hard on me, they made me strong. I had to be there. And plus, I had a chip on my shoulder too. See, because I'd lost my family and I wanted them back, because still some part of me is like I couldn't give up. I wanted to get all this stuff I lost back. Well, one day, I believe it was in 2013, I'm running this saw where I got these about 12 foot long 4x4s and I'm making blocks out of them. Well, when I get them up to me, I got to cut them. Now, all the good blocks that you're cutting, you put in a bin right beside of, because by the time you get to the end of them, you get 3 blocks left over that weren't the right size. Well, the hopper to throw the bad blocks that were scraps was about 15 yards away from me. And normally when you wait till you get a fork truck driver and you flag him and you say, hey, can you bring that hopper a little closer to me so I don't have to, throw him. But with me, I was making a game out of it. So I decide if each time I get 3 blocks in a row, that's a game, I win. But if I miss 1 block out of the 3, because there's 3 left over 10, if I miss one of those 3, I lose that game. I had to get at least 41 out of the 48 blocks in there to make it to the playoffs with a 9-7 record. But if I only get 41 out of 48, that was a wild card game, so I had an extra playoff game. But if I could get at least 43 out of the 48 in there, then I got the bye of the wild card game. So a perfect season needed to be 60 blocks in a row. And my hopper that's filling up with blocks is getting about half full now because I've already got some seasons behind me. I'd already won some Super Bowls, but I never had every block go in out of all 60. Well, I get to the very last block. I have 59 blocks go in a row. I've got so much confidence at this point. It's like, and it goes, 60th block goes in and poof, it hits and it bounces out. And I'm like, damn, even this game's only going to my imagination. There's no spectators, nothing. I'm doing a job, but I'm putting my imagination and I'm imagining this game going on, right? It misses, the block comes out, so I'm like, what was that guy's name? Oh, Brady. I just got Brady'd. What the fuck? It's like, what's this kind of humorous thing? Well, then, for the first time living in 2014, had cable. My oldest son, he says, Papa, why don't you pick a team going into the playoffs and I'll pick a team. We'll see whose team wins. But if one of our team gets knocked out, then we root for the other team. And I'm like, that sounds like a plan. So I picked the Dallas Cowboys going into the playoffs, and he picked the New England Patriots. Now, Cowboys get knocked out. So, honoring the commitment to my son, I pull in with the Patriots to root with them, and there's that Tom Brady. And now I see him, and it's like, wow, this is a long time. It's past. This man's into his mid-30s and stuff, and he's past the point that you're supposed to be, and a great athlete, but he was great still. And he still hadn't got that fourth Super Bowl to tie Terry Bradshaw. And the first game that we go to we're rooting for the same team, me and my son, in professional football. Wouldn't you know it? The Deflategate game against the Colts. And the New England Patriots dominated them. Somebody, I think Skip Bayless might have said Brady could have been playing that game with a bowling ball and they would have won that game. But nonetheless, now, then the Super Bowl day comes up. It turned out the guy, when he hooked up my cable, he was supposed to be hooking up internet, but he gave me cable channels too, and he told me it was okay, you know. But I was getting a little bit of static before the Super Bowl, so I called the cable company, came out and found the problem with the cable line, but my channels was going, so I didn't have no football coming into the Super Bowl. So we had to go to my mom's to watch the Super Bowl. Well, there at my mom's was my oldest sister, who at this point is a Steelers fan, so she hated the Patriots because, you know, playoff rivalries between the Steelers and the Patriots. And my mom's best friend, and it's also her first cousin, lived out in Indianapolis. My mom had already heard about what a cheater Tom Brady was. And so we're kind of uninvited guests because they're already going to watch the Super Bowl and root against the Patriots. But here I show up with my 3 kids and tell them we're all rooting for the Patriots. And so, but they win. They beat the Seattle Seahawks. And my mom, my sister was good to me. They took it. They weren't happy, but they, you know, weren't bad sports about it either. So that happened. And the next year, we go back to my mom's home. My mom never got over thinking that Tom Brady was a cheater. And we end up back here again, being all 3 of my kids. And it's the Super Bowl again. Now this time we followed the Patriots the whole way through the season. And it wasn't looking good at halftime, buddy. It was 21-3 at the half, I believe, and then it ended up going to 28-3. My youngest son says to me, he's like, "Bob, I'm not liking this," you know, and it's like, well, this is the way it is. Sometimes, son, you watch it to the end, and my mom's like, "Oh, don't make them watch it if they're not liking it." And I'm like, "Well, I watch it to the end." And wouldn't you know, it was the greatest Super Bowl comeback ever in history, and that Tom Brady, not only had he got his 4th year before, now he got his 5th, and ain't nobody ever done that. And I, being the guy who didn't want him to get his 4th and didn't think he was great, now I'm seeing he's great, and I understood why he was great. He was great because he didn't get that Super Bowl in that perfect season back in 2007. So he had that chip on his shoulder and that drive to be great. And then he had people saying he was a cheater, and he had to prove it wasn't because of a deflated football. He had this chip, and he was trying to prove his greatness and stuff like that. So I loved him. He gave me a great, happy experience with my family and stuff. And then the next year, they don't win. They lose to the Eagles. I wasn't with my family that day, and but that's the way sports works. And you know you don't win all. You don't win them all. The great ones win a lot of them. That's just the difference there. And I also related that John Elway. And I hated John Elway, but I hated him for his greatness. And so when people say, "Oh, Tom Brady," you know, I was like, I get it. You know, I really do. I really get it. And then 2019 season, my mom she had been put in a nursing home with sickness and was during that spring and that summer, but she'd have her moments of clarity and stuff. And I was there at the nursing home visiting her one time, and on Oprah Winfrey, Tom Brady came on there to talk and stuff like that. And I was like really watching it, and she's like, why do you like him so much? She's like, I don't get it. She's like, I can understand if you like his Giselle, she's beautiful, but why do you care so much about him? I'm like, Mom, you remember that little brother that died before he was born? And I'm like, I never had that little brother, and it might have been a low blow story because in my crazy imagination about it, it's like I could imagine Tom Brady was my little brother that I never had, that God had sent to me, but to say it, you know, to where it always been like that, it really been because my son had got me into it, and I was bear witness to his greatness, and you know, then only once he's great, I'm like, that's a little brother I never had, you know. So But nonetheless, my mom, she never had no more bad words about Tom Brady, and so then that season comes away. Well, after she passed away, I moved out of town. And out stuff from where I was moving away, and ended up seeing the Super Bowl against the Rams there with my youngest son. There, me and him got to have a Super Bowl experience. And once again, Tom Brady, when he won his 6th, still with New England Patriots. Damn, Tom Brady was the gift that just kept on giving. And then when he come over up there New England and goes down to Tampa, I could understand that too, because when I was at the sawmill and I went in there, the bosses were like my age, and God bless them, they did have a little part of them. It's like, well, we don't compete with these young guys doing the physical work jobs anymore because we went beyond that and we're bosses now. And they did all that. Well, me, I got to come in there and compete with the young kids, and did. So there's a little bit of him. It's like he's got some respect amongst those young guys that I don't have. I can understand a resentment from the coaches to prove that they're the ones that made the team great. And once Tom Brady was coach's age, and he was out there on the field, and he was a field general and did understand the sport of the field, I can understand how coaches couldn't help but envy his position like it was, And so I understood why he had to go to Tampa and prove he could win a Super Bowl without Bill Belichick. And he did. He did that too, and he got his number 7th. And that put him beyond Michael Jordan even, and stepping over in a whole other sport. He just did it all, man. And then the final season, he loses his final game, but he put enough points up there for him to win, put it that way. And he led the league in passing. But God bless him, he didn't get that MVP. Congratulations, Tom Brady. That gives you a chip on your shoulder going into retirement, brother. Let's keep her going, dog.